How's it going, everybody? So, there is a 2020 vinyl tag going around like a bad case of herpes. And I was kind of hoping I would be able to evade it this time around, but Devin over at Maze of Torment decided to call me out. And, you know, maybe there's something fun here. I don't know. We'll try. These lists are always difficult to, I always kind of feel put on the spot with them. But, we'll try come up with something interesting to talk about here. So, without further ado, we got 20 questions to go through, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to cheat on this. They're not all going. This isn't all going to be vinyl, and some of my answers may not be according to the rules, but that's just the way it is. It's my channel. If you don't like it, start your own channel, and you can follow the rules exactly. But first question: best find of 2019. This is probably the hardest question that's on here because I cannot remember from one day to the next what I even eat for dinner. So it was really hard to think back and did not do a lot of crate digging and shit last year. But I did get this at a local shop in town. All-time favorite album of mine. I always wanted. This actually could have been. This is going to be in the list twice. Just the way it is. But I got this in 2019. Creator Extreme Aggression Rewinded, Remastered, basically. It's a 3 LP set. It's got Extreme Aggression, which is one of my top favorite Creator albums, and also has Live in East Berlin in 1990. It's a great package. It's a trifold. I'm not going to show it to you because it's harder than shit to get in and out of the poly bag because it's such a humongous package. But this is one of my favorite albums of all time, probably top 10, and the original pressing has been difficult for me to find within a reasonable price and reasonable condition. So I capitulated and got the reissue, which there's a question, a reissue that you wish you owned an original copy of. That would be this as well. I'll get an original copy at some point, but not really on my list. But favorite album of 2019. I kind of stopped doing lists, and I remember thinking last year that I had like a top 5 like rolling around in my head of albums that I would name. This album is one of them, but I don't think this was going to be the top one. But since I can't currently remember the top album, I'm going with this one because it deserved it. But this is Arch Matheos, Winter Ethereal. I'm a big John Arch fan, as you will see later on in this list. And I love his voice, always have. And he is the master at cramming in a million syllables, a million words into phrases, and somehow makes it work without sounding too pretentious. But the Sympathetic Resonance, the first full length that John Arch and Jim Mateos did, was a fantastic album, and I like it better than this album. But this is a way more proggy, way more complex album. Steve DiGiorgio plays some drums or some bass on this. There's a array of drummers on here as well. But if you're into prog metal, Arch Matheos, John Arch sounds like he's still 16 to 20 years old vocally. Years of not touring and beating himself up has preserved his voice wonderfully. I know he's got to work a lot harder these days to get to this level, but this is a fantastic album, and it was one of my favorites of 2019. Took a lot of listens to get into it, though. It's a very complex record. It just doesn't jump out at like Sympathetic Resonance did. Excellent record. One of my favorites of 2019. A novelty record. You know, I went through and looked, and I don't have any. I mean, when I was a kid, I had a Captain America and the Falcon comic book record. It's like a 45 with a comic book You turn the page, you know, as you play the record. I had that. I thought I still had it, but I don't. So, yeah, I don't really have any novelty records. So I'm skipping that one. Homage cover. Cover pays homage to another artist. This was the one that came to mind kind of instantly. This is not an LP, obviously. But this is In Conspiracy with Satan, a tribute to Bathory. This came out, you can see the goat back there. This came out in, what year did this come out? Is it going to tell me? Nope. This came out initially on Hellspawn Records, by was the record label by one David Parland, who was a great riff writer, and he was in the band Necrophobic up through their second album, or their second EP. And then he went on to co-found Dark Funeral. And he was also in his own project called Infernal, I want to say. But he had his own, he put his own record label together on called Hellspawn Records. This came out on No Fashion and House of Kicks. This album was released as probably one of the coolest Bathory tributes you're ever going to hear. And Black Moon was quickly sued by Black Mark Productions boss. See, they put the bar over They're using Quorthon's image and likeness and artwork, probably without permission. And once this came out, the shit hit the fan, and I don't think this saw a whole lot of pressings because there was a lawsuit against it. But this is a great cover. Marduk in Conspiracy with Satan, Ophthalmia with Sacrifice, Gehenna with Reaper, Dark Funeral with Equimanthorn, Emperor, A Fine Day to Die, Lord Belial Massacre, The Abyss with Armageddon, Marduk again with Woman of Dark Desires, Niflheim, Die in Fire, Necrophobic, Enter the Eternal Fire, Dark Funeral, Call from the Grave, Sacramentum, 13 Candles, Unanimated, Raise the Dead, Satyricon, Born for Burning, and War, which was another David Parland project with the song War. This is a very cool tribute to Quorthon. It's too bad the Forsbergs wouldn't let that slide. Next up, B-side, Deep Cut. Okay. I went with one of my favorite 7-inches, actually. This thing is so fucking heavy. Ulcerous Phlegm. I'm going to go with The Day Man Lost on side B, which is a carbonized cover. Excuse me. A Carnage cover. The Day Man Lost. Why did I say carbonized? I think these guys are German. Yep, they're German. And this is a 4-song 7-inch I got from the old Relapse catalog back in the day. And this thing is just fucking crushing. They're tuned to A or below, I don't know, but the strings sound like rubber bands is dripping off the fretboard, and just a sick, thick guitar tone. Excellent 7-inch. Day the Man Lost cover, Carnage. Next up, something funky. We're going to go with, I don't have a lot of funky stuff. I could have grabbed Scatterbrain cassette, which I should have thought of, but Mordred, Fool's Game. There is a handful of songs on here. Every Day's a Holiday. Super Freak. They do a cover of Rick James' Super Freak, which is a fucking abomination. I think there's one more song on here, but this is essentially, I think these guys are Bay Area thrash. Dennis, let me know if I'm wrong or not. Is there an address on here? I don't know. Anyway, this is mostly a decent thrash record, a good US thrash record. The singer is kind of high-pitched, kind of squealy, maybe detracts a little bit from it, but the thrash itself is tight, really well written. I've always really liked this record, other than the Super Freak and Every Day's a Holiday. You know, it's got some funky bass and some scratching and shit on it, which this is a Noise International release, or Noise Records, and back in the day, I thrived on that shit. So that was my funky thing. Weird Shelf Buddies. Records next to each other that make an odd pair. We are going to go with Abyssic Hate, Suicidal Emotions is sitting quite uncomfortably next to Accepts Balls to the Wall. Is that the name of this album? I believe it is. Yep, Balls to the Wall. I just recently got this record, and it fucking rules. I'm quite impressed how good this record is. But yeah, I mean, you got basically the band that kind of got the whole depressive black metal thing going, and classic German heavy metal. Kind of, you know, it's metal, but it's still, they couldn't be further away from each other. So those are my strange bedfellows. I Was There, a band I've seen. I grabbed Sacrifice, Forward Determination. I saw these guys in 89 or 90. We talked about this on the streams before. I've talked about this in videos before. In fact, Ken from Ken's Metal Crypt was at this same show. But actually, I saw this band. I went to this show. It was the first ever Michigan Death Fest put on by Sandy, Metal Mom. I went down to see Sacrifice, and other bands that were on the label: Nuclear Death, Deceased, Baphomet, Sacrifice, and the headliner was Morbid Angel. There was one more band, Fatal, I want to say, or Sinister Black. I can't remember. One of the coolest fests I've ever been to, for sure. I mean, that fest opened my eyes to extreme death metal. I mean, I was always a thrash guy, but once I saw Morbid Angel and Deceased and all that crap, and Baphomet was just fucking crushing. Actually, Sacrifice was there to support the album Soldiers of Misfortune, which I don't have that record. I don't have that record or Apocalypse Inside. I have neither of those. For some reason, I always thought that they were inferior, but I see a lot of people lately talking about them, so I'm probably going to have to investigate those too. But this album is a fucking ripper. I love it. Love the riffs on this. Love the production. Great record. Of course, Torment and Fire, also fantastic. Wish I had an OG, but I have a repress. That would be The Somber Lane by Dissection. I don't know if there ever was an original pressing of this. Was there? I don't know. Probably, I would guess. It was probably on No Fashion or something, but this is a Black Horizons, the End Records pressing. I'm assuming these things are worth some money nowadays, but yeah, I've got an OG press of the Storm of the Light's Bane gatefold blue vinyl. Got that when it came out. Very, it's like one of my all-time favorite records. Had to have that when it came out. But yeah, can't get much better than this record. You know, I'm completely fine with the repress, to be honest. But if, you know, a real copy came along for about what I paid for this, that would be excellent. A discography you own. You own all major releases of an artist, or artist you own the most of. I mean, there's Iron Maiden. I'm not showing you any of that. And I own every Dark Throne and then a bunch of other shit. I mean, every single one, either on vinyl or CD, and at one point cassette. So yeah, that's my answer. It's not a very interesting thing to show, but unique center label. You know, I'm not gonna fucking... Center label is the furthest thing from my visual realm. When I'm putting on a record, I'm just trying to hit the hole. You know, just trying to hit the hole. And most of the time, the center labels are probably the least interesting thing on a record design, but that's just me. Pre-band, an album or band that featured someone who went on to be famous. I've got something. I have two things to show you, actually, and both of these are a friend of mine. And actually, I didn't show the one band that would have been the obvious one. I don't know why, but my friend is S. Craig Zoller. He was in the band Wombat. This is Ready for Combat. This is like a 4-song demo EP. And then their full-length Basement Metal. There's Mr. Zoller right there. Jeff Harriet, Hefe. And these two went on to do the band Realm Builder, which is more epic metal fueled weirdness from these guys. Some of the Stone Throwers. Fortifications of the Pale Architect. Of course, Zoller drew every single one of these covers himself. Did all the design for it. And their third, it's not their last, I guess they got another album coming. But this is Blue Flame Cavalry. And I was also in a band with Zoller for 2 albums. Our band was Charnel Valley. How is he popular? Well, if you didn't know him, he is a very talented writer, a very talented illustrator. And he has gone on to be a very talented writer and producer and screenplay author. Movies he has done are Bone Tomahawk, Dragged Across Concrete, and Raw Knuckles, I want to say. What's the third album? It's got Mel Gibson in it. The third movie. I have not seen it yet. Sorry, Craig, but I have not seen that movie yet. Yeah, super. I don't know if he's super popular, super talented, or super famous, but hell of a lot more than when we were writing at Metal Maniacs, that's for sure. And he's a great guy, and also he's got a graphic novel coming out too. I cannot remember the name of. But music, book, movie you'd recommend. Movie. I really like the Born in the Basement movie documentary. I also like Suburbia. It's more of a punk coming of age, weird, fucked up movie with a lot of cool punk performances. Books. I mean, Matt just shown this, so this isn't anything but anything super interesting to talk about, I guess, since he just did. But this is Damn the Machine by David E. Gelke. And this is the story of Noise Records. And Noise Records is one of my all-time favorite record labels. One of the most influential record labels in my musical development. Easily. You know, Creator, Voivod, Celtic Frost, Hellhammer, Running Wild. I mean, all of the classic Tankard, all the classic European thrash bands were funneled through this label, and it was really interesting to read this book and hear how very much the owner, Walterbach, was that his name? Kind of treated the bands shitty. Even the ones that made him a ton of money. He treated them like property, not like people, not like artists. But yeah, excellent book. If you're at all interested, I would highly recommend this book. And this book here is this is a quick read. It's not really deep or heavy, but this is Mustaine. I don't know if this is an autobiography or if he worked on it with somebody, but this book was very interesting to read just to get Dave's perspective on the whole Metallica thing. Granted, that was a very small portion of the book, and it goes all the way back to childhood with his dad and his drug abuse, and you know, there's some color pictures in here and everything. But I read this book in 2 or 3 days. I just fell into it, and I found his perspective interesting. I found his story very interesting, and I find a lion's share of his music amazing. And I have not read this in a while, so I really cannot sit here and tell you much about it other than it was a good read, and this is another one of those books that I read really quickly as well, and this is Are You Morbid? Into the Pandemonium of Celtic Frost. This is written by Thomas Gabriel Fisher, and it documents pretty much the whole history. In a lot of ways, I think that book that came out on Bazillion Points Publishing, the Hellhammer Coffee Table book, in a lot of ways, I think that was a little more candid on how Hellhammer got started and their whole history. This here just talked a lot about, you know, girlfriends and touring and, you know, studio stuff. Very interesting. I need to read it again. Again, I don't remember it all that well, other than I did like it a lot. He whines a lot, and And at this point in his history, he didn't want to talk about Hellhammer much. He saw Hellhammer as very immature, very childish. He is an artist, of course, so he kind of just thumbs his nose at that era in this book. But he obviously changed his mind once Hellhammer was starting to get more and more praise. Of course, he changed his tune on that. But good book. Underrated album. I love this record. And I don't know if calling it underrated makes a lot of sense because it was on a major label for this style of music. And it's a big band. But I love this album. Sentenced Amok. I mean, some of you might think it's a little odd for me to pull this record out, but there's something about this record. I mean, obviously, they're no longer death metal or death thrash like they were on Shadows of Past and North From Here. And North From Here was very much a thrashy type of death thrash black crossover thing. Amok, you could tell Jarva was listening to probably a little bit of Fields of the Nephilim. There's definitely a gothic rock slant to this material. I mean, it's not kind of. It's a total gothic rock slant. But the songs are very catchy. Phoenix, New Age Messiah, Forever Lost. Oh, so good. The Penthe. Dance on the Graves, Little Sister. I'm a big fan of this record. This, for me, is very much a fall time record. Yeah, don't know what to say. And when I put it on, I usually listen to it 3 times because it's so catchy. Batting average. Artist, band who consistently makes good albums. I got 2 for you. One of them should be no mystery. That would be Bolt Thrower. Battle There Is No Law. This is an OG Vinyl Solution Press. No, this is not. This is the... Yeah, it is. This is... I had a copy of this. I sent it to my friend, and he felt bad because he already had it, so he sent me the copy he bought in Sweden for 500 kroner, however much that is. But yeah, Battle There Is No Law, Bolt Thrower, every album they put out, everyone has been great. For Victory being my favorite, but yeah, these guys have never disappointed. They toed the line. They wrote riff after riff of severe awesomeness. The next band, Panopticon, Collapse. This is Collapse, an OG press, which we're getting ready to repress this, so it's coming soon. But this came out on Pagan Flames and the Flenser. Austin has got a unique talent of every instrument he touches, he's good at. Every single album, even the first one, which is basically an anarchist record, he hates that record. He thinks it's immature, it's this or that. I don't see it. I think it's a very good record, very venomous, full of fury. And as he progressed, he got a lot more experimental by incorporating Americana, bluegrass, and somehow, think about combining bluegrass and black metal. It shouldn't fucking work, but somehow he shoehorned that shit all together, and it works great. And not only do I love his band, he's a dear friend of mine. But yeah, every single thing he's put out, I've loved. It's another one. Same album, different cover. Okay. Hellhammer, Apocalyptic Raids. There you go. Fair enough. An album you bought cheap that's now worth money. Oh, look. Hellhammer, Apocalyptic Raids. How much did I pay for it? $1.99. This is a noise pressing. OG. Another one. Same store. I've shown all this stuff before. Celtic Frost, Morbid Tales. $1.99. And this came with the poster and the order form, all that shit in here as well. So I've got a lot of records. That store in downtown, New Moon Records, was owned by His name was Mike and Teresa. Mike was Bob Seger's touring manager for many, many, many years, all through the 70s, and he opened up a record store in town. They would get tons and tons of metal when CDs came in. People would either get born again or ditch their vinyl collection for favor of CDs, and she would get all the stuff, wouldn't know what to do with it, so she marked it all low, super low. And it was during a time where vinyl wasn't really all that hot anymore. So I got a lot of classics for cheap. Favorite drummer. Could have picked Lombardo. Could have picked George Calais. Is that his name? I mean, there's so many fantastic drummers. And I'm going to keep it raw and organic. I'm going with Kyle Severn from Incantation. Kyle has a very heavy, he's got a very organic and heavy drum sound. He's very much influenced by Chris Riefert, I think. A lot of tom work. He's just a very primal drummer, but his beats are very well considered, and his accents really uplift and empower the riffs that John's throwing down. I think I just seen an interview with him saying that he was coming off of heroin or something, or coke or something at this point, and wasn't really up to his full potential on this record. But I love this record. I think the playing on it's great. It's just heavy, well written, and just thunderous, man. He's just such a great organic drummer. Album drummer turning 20. An album turning 20 in 2020. Chasm, Procession to the Infraworld. This album fucking rules. This band fucking rules. And you got up here Daniel Corchado, The Spirit, The Heart, and Antonio Leon, which is, these two have been the Chasm since the beginning. Daniel came out of the band Cenotaph, started the Chasm with Antonio. Julio Vinterbo is very much a part of this stuff too, the really good stuff. He's no longer with the band, and neither is this Alfonso Polo. They're basically, the Chasms had kind of a revolving lineup for a lot of years. Daniel was on, sang, and played bass, or he played guitar with them live on this tour, but I think he plays bass, and he obviously does the vocals on here. But Procession to the Infraworld, this is another one of those great, and Antonio Leon is another one of those really organic, well-considered drummers. If you haven't heard this record, it's great. This is not one of the instrument. I mean, Chasm is kind of, I think Daniel is done with the screaming. He's kind of blew his voice out. I think he kind of hurt himself over the years. So, I mean, the last few Chasm records have been great, but they've been instrumental. This is very much a strong, powerful, and amazing death metal record. If you have not heard this record, I strongly suggest you check that out. Mine is number 12 of 500 on Dwell Records and Sempiternal Productions. Trilogy albums. This is the last category, by the way. And 3 solid albums back to back to back from the same artist, bands. Should be a connecting thread. Well, my connecting thread in this is King Diamond, because I kind of cheated on this for a reason. We've got Merciful Fate Melissa, Don't Break the Oath, and my favorite King Diamond record, Fatal Portrait. So why is a King Diamond record with the Merciful Fate records? Because Fatal Portrait, to me, sounds like the logical step in Merciful Fate's evolution. I think King wrote a lot of songs with Merciful Fate in mind for this album. And when Merciful Fate broke up, he basically took his songs and started a solo career. But the atmosphere and the songwriting and even the pictures, check out that. That's probably one of the most evil fucking cool King Diamond pictures ever. This is to me, this is a Merciful Fate record, and these are unfuckwithable metal statements. Hank Sherman and Michael Denner, these two are. They were the Murray Smith of underground occult metal to me, but in a lot of ways they're a lot. Say they're better is kind of a statement, but the way these two play guitar and fed off of each other and wove those riffs together. It was fucking genius. You can tell these guys practiced constantly together, and they knew what each other was going to do inside it out. Sherman left, Denner carried on, and Andy LaRocque joined. And again, Andy LaRocque is one of those guitar players that does not play the wrong note. He is always perfect. But this is a great record. This is basically Merciful Fate minus Sherman and Kim Ruz, who played on Merciful Fate records and was gone forever after that. But yes, definitely great. And I've got one more. Just because. Fate's Warning. Trilogy of records. We got Night on Brocken. First album. This is another one of those albums that has different covers. This is the Canadian pressing on Bonsai. There was the US pressing, which was like a really piss poor drawn mountaintop scene of like witches and shit. And then the third one is cassette, and that is a reissue of this album where it's a Metal Blade reissue where it's just the moon, a picture of the moon. The common thread on this is, I'm going to say mysticism. Mysticism and John Arch. Next up is Spectre Within. Obviously a huge progression from this album. You could tell they're very young, raw, just wanting to be heavy, but somehow eked out a very unique sound, and that sound is refined on Spectre Within, is getting a lot more mystical and well considered, a little more proggy, for them to finally settle on Waken the Guardian, which is one of my all-time favorite albums. Easily one of my all-time favorite albums. There isn't many albums. I mean, there are moments of this record that bring me to tears, just for the atmosphere, the power, the emotion, the lyrics. There's just a lot of deep thoughts on this record, and I love it. Absolutely love it. So there's another trilogy. I could have grabbed the first 3 Omen records. That was a pretty easy one to do. But that's it. Devin, there's your damn list. It was fun. Glad I did it, and I'll see everyone again very soon. Thank you for watching, commenting, liking, disliking, calling me an idiot, whatever. Don't care. See y'all later. Take care.